Okay, good evening or good afternoon. Welcome to the Project Forward Capital Camp. Part of our impetus in deciding to do this capital camp is really just to provide some information to folks around how to not only apply for the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund and demystify that process, but also how to actually secure the award. Unfortunately, to date, there is like less than 10 to 15% of the actual collection from people who get, like you hear people get announced that they are getting the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund to actually being able to collect on those funds. So we want to give you an overview of how to get through not just the application process, but actually get through collecting on the funding for it. So this is our very first time doing this type of immersive capital camp. We really just wanted to get the word out, partially because recently another project that we are working on that we'll go into a little more detail on has been awarded some funds. And so just even as a means of getting some visibility for that project, as well as garnering some excitement for it, and showcasing what we will actually be doing once the space opens up, we've decided to host this capital camp. So this is our first time, but we will likely be doing this again over the next few months and leading up to additional rounds for the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. So just to give you an overview of who I am, the Forward Capital Camp is a part of the Emerging Neighborhood Developer Accelerator program that will be hosted at the K. The K is an accelerator that offers back office support and training to increase access to capital for low to moderate income communities, as well as to increase equitable and sustainable business and real estate development. So once this facility opens, we will be offering incubation services as well as accelerator services. There's office space, retail, a cafe, and a couple of other cool things that will be happening there. So here is a very brief overview of who I am, Project Forward, and the success that we've had. So I am our founder and chief solutionist of Project Forward. Really, the reason that I started the company is to continue to help neighborhoods thrive and flourish in connecting entrepreneurs with capital. So over the last 5 years, we've helped our clients secure over 30 million, and we've engaged nearly 10,000 small businesses within 10 communities within the Chicagoland area last year and across 5 states. We also are supporting policy around community investment vehicles, which allow community residents to be able to benefit and invest in the real estate projects that are actually coming to their neighborhoods. So the goal is for folks who have lived in these neighborhoods that have been blighted for a significant period of time to be able to participate in the community's revitalization. Some of our clients include community development finance institutions, which are lending organizations that may or may not be banks. So 2 of those clients are Chicago Community Loan Fund, as well as Chicago Trend, which are both lenders that you should become very familiar with. And we will go into a little more in depth over the next 7 days. We've also done some work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as community organizations like the Southeast Chicago Commission and community-based businesses that you may be familiar with, which include Freestyle and Leaders. So from our perspective, this is like an overview of the products and services that our company offers. So I just gave a really brief overview of Project Forward. But some of the other initiatives that we focus on include the Urban Real Estate Conference, which started in 2019. And that was really on the basis of what our firm started to see as far as a lack of connectivity between organizations that are looking to do real estate development on a small scale, and small scale is typically less than $10 million. So when I say small, I don't mean super small, but small in the sense that it's not a huge $40 million or $50 million projects. So this conference really connected service providers like City of Chicago, various departments within the city, so Department of Planning and Development, Department of Housing. We also had a number of the CDFIs that were previously mentioned that are funding these real estate projects in connection with every other player in the ecosystem. So your architects, your zoning attorneys, land use folks. And so connecting the dots so that for those that are interested in getting into the space, there is a full level of understanding of what that means. We will go over a high level overview of some of these things during the 7-day camp. But there are a couple of other opportunities to get more immersed in that. Shop Forward is our digital marketplace, as well as matching service and education hub for pop-up tenants and landlords. So ultimately, it's a prop tech product with the goal of reducing chronic vacancies in underserved corridors. So we want to be able, again, to connect those pop-up tenants with landlords, but also sometimes we will support physical markets. So we've done a few markets, particularly like around Small Business Saturday or a holiday shopping event, but these are not typically consistent markets. They will be pop-ups as well as, again, focused on that back office tech support piece. And then what you are in today is a capital camp, but that leads ideally into our Emerging Neighborhood Developer Accelerator initiative. So we are working with a number of clients that are interested in these neighborhood-based projects, with folks that are interested in securing at least $500,000, moving up to a few million. But again, it is the focus of supporting these neighborhood-based entrepreneurs with some more comprehensive support. So more than just a 7-day immersive series. We're working with clients on average for 2 years. And part of that 2-year duration is helping them to secure their capital for their projects, connecting them with the resources and service providers at the city level, helping to navigate, like, why do you need to go talk to your alderman? What's happening with inspection? How do you prove that you have had community support for what your project is? So I'm sure you watched or heard on the news when folks will say, I can't get a meeting with the alderman, or the alderman won't sign off on what I want to do. In many cases, there is a disconnect between what the entrepreneur has said they want to do and what the community has said that they want. So we ensure that those connections are made prior to folks getting too far along in the process and then figuring they can't do what it is that they want to get done. We do not want you to be a sports bar who cannot get a liquor license. And that is a real example that we have encountered. And so we hope to help our clients avoid those types of pitfalls. And finally, the K, which is when you registered, one of the questions in your registration was, are you interested in becoming a member of the K? Part of that, again, is why we're doing a free capital camp, because that is an example of the type of programming that would exist in the space once we actually do open up. It's an adaptive reuse project in West Garfield Park that will incubate and accelerate businesses. We will have a cafe, office space, retail, as well as event space, but we are currently recruiting for tenants and members now. Again, there is a level of free membership, but of course, paid membership has its privileges. You will not be able to access recordings of this without signing up to say you want to be a free member of the K. But moving into us actually physically opening our space, there would be just more in-depth supportive services. So one of the things we are super excited about is that we have recently won the Chicago Prize for the K. The picture on the left is our team. So the K is a part of what's called the Sankofa Wellness Village. So that is not, we don't get 10 million on our own, it's 10 million to the village. And the other projects that are coming on board is a $40 million community wellness center that will be anchored by Rush, as well as another approximately $5 million project for arts and culture, and then the K, which is approximately $5.5 million as the incubator accelerator space. So our history of success has been with a number of clients that you may know, as well as some that you may not know. So when we are talking about the support that we offer to entrepreneurs and doing this in this 7-day consolidated period, it's on the basis of what we do in more in depth for the clients that engage us. So here are some examples of some work that we've done, particularly around helping clients not only secure capital, but also secure land. The K is an example. We are going through the Cook County Land Bank Authority for the acquisition of that building, but have also helped the two clients on this particular screen secure a building. One is a building in Inglewood, the other was a site assembly. So that particular client had private lots, and then the last site that they had to secure, the last parcel they needed to secure for the completion of their site was a land bank project. Both of these clients attempted to go through the process on their own and were probably between 12 months and 24 months into the process with no resolve. And so we were able to help navigate them getting through and closing on both the building as well as a vacant lot so they could move forward on their projects. The Woodlawn is a client that we supported for a few things, one being the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, the other, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen the before, so maybe next time I do this presentation, I will show y'all some before and after photos. But we helped the Woodlawn secure a small Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant, but also the very first pop-up restaurant license in the city of Chicago. So the Woodlawn is a venue where you can go in and rent the kitchen, but also there's event space tied to it, and they do community sourced programming. So we helped them secure the NOF, we helped them secure that business license. And if anybody has gone through a licensing process, it's not always straightforward. And it definitely isn't straightforward when you are trying to secure a brand new license that the city is just sussing out. We also helped them to get a grant from Chicago Trend, which was one of the clients we mentioned earlier. And then they are also expanding and doing a new concept in the Chicago Park District. So we helped with that concession application and help them navigate that process as well. And then finally, another client that we helped to secure a large Chicago recovery, or what's now being called the Chicago Development Grant, help them to navigate some of the other kind of partnership processes and going through not just the acquisition of that building, but moving forward on the planning side to make sure that from a community participation standpoint, the project is able to not only support the efforts through what the entrepreneur wants to do, but the entrepreneur is able to convey to the community how what they want to do meets the needs, particularly in highlighting some of the commercial corridor planning that has happened within the Bronzeville and Washington Park neighborhood. Okay, I jumped all the way for that one. Okay, so people have asked why do a capital camp? Why do neighborhood entrepreneurs need this type of support? Partially because a number of the city funding programs with NOF, but prior to NOF, you had the Small Business Improvement Fund. The city is asking for business owners to put on a developer hat. You are being asked to put together a project budget, scope out the project, identify your sources and uses, and depending on your experience as an entrepreneur, some of the requests it may have been your first time hearing, especially if you've been self-funded. So when we talk about neighborhood developers, who are we actually talking about? For the most part, it's you. Everybody who signed up for this call has indicated that they either currently own or they want to own, their current business owners. Um, but who are these neighborhood developers? So we support entrepreneurs who want to own spaces for their business. We also support business organizations who are charged with corridor and neighborhood development. So you might be what's called a community development corporation. In some cases, we've got business associations that are doing this type of activity. But typically, the neighborhood developers are at least 5 years old or older. So meaning you've been in the corridor or the neighborhood that you'd like to serve. You have a hyper local expertise in the market. So there's some information, especially if you are in an underserved corridor, that does not appear in anybody's Nielsen study or data that's typically pulled from some other resources. You've got this expertise because you've been on the block. Many times the neighborhood developers that we work with lack the staff or the bandwidth to, number one, be able to identify, evaluate, and or engage the professional services to prepare for the type of access to capital you need to pull your project off. So we talk to entrepreneurs that say, I don't know how to evaluate an architect, or I don't know how to evaluate an attorney. Or you're still managing your day-to-day business to where now you have to put on this other developer hat. And you're like, I don't have the time to do that either. I'm still managing my day-to-day operations for the business. So we will support entrepreneurs who aspire to be neighborhood developers because of that lack of staff or bandwidth. And then additionally, what we found is sometimes we are acting as a translator. So sometimes folks can access these resources, but they may not trust them. And so we will act as a bridge to be able to support the identification of culturally competent and professionally astute networks. So we don't just want to find you an accountant. We want to find you an accountant that understands your business, understands what may be happening on a day-to-day basis in your business, understand why you have some of the challenges, but also create strategies that meet you where you are and not just tell you where you should be. So we work really diligently to ensure that our network of professional service providers kind of check off all those boxes, but can get you to a plan that you can execute and fulfill. So our mission overall is to provide this kind of back office support for these projects that are typically under 10 million. We want to teach what commercial development looks like in commercial corridors. So many of you are in various places. And we are hopeful that by you going through this program, you then become someone who will teach someone else what you are learning. We want to help build the capacity of the neighborhood developer to be able to pursue this on your own. So whether or not you choose to engage Project Forward is not like, that's not our ultimate goal. We really want you to be able to build your neighborhoods and see these projects to fruition. Also building the entrepreneurial base for disinvested neighborhoods. There are only so many folks that are willing to go into neighborhoods early on. And many times it's not going to be the big box. It's not going to be a major retailer. It often is going to be the small local entrepreneur who feels comfortable in these neighborhoods. And we want to build your base to be able to do that. Finally, aside from supporting the building of this trusted network, so once you go through this class, you will then be or continue to be a community anchor, but we want to support the increase of circulation of dollars. So again, as we talk about how do we help to build these communities, it's really going to come from you. Here is an example of the peer facilitators. So all of the people you see on the screen are people that we being Project Forward, are either helping as clients or helping as partners. And so these people that you will start to see videos and hear from, number one, are doing their own projects. Number two, have engaged with Project Forward, both as a partner, but also as a client. And all of the people are in it. Like we're again not talking to you just as quote unquote experts, but we are either in the middle of our own real estate projects, our building projects. So Jim is a contractor and developer of the K. Dion is our architect, but also an architect to a number of projects in Chicago, and has kind of created a social innovation space that is getting some visibility in the philanthropic standpoint. But he also has been a neighborhood opportunity fund recipient, and he and I collaborated on one of the materials that you'll see on the next slide. But all of us are in the middle of these wonderful things and are willing to share our insight and feedback and help you to avoid some of the things that we may have encountered or we have heard that our clients or partners have encountered. So you can learn by not necessarily having to go through the exact experience, but we just want to make sure that we are, again, supporting folks from what we have learned and can help you bypass some of the pain. The topics that we will cover within the 7 days, all 7 days are not live. Most of this is going to be content that you have the ability to access on demand. The only day that is a live day is our Q&A day on Friday, but everything else should be able to be accessed on your time, as well as we'll have some follow-up activities to make sure that you, especially for those that actually want to apply for the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund in this particular round, that you are completing tasks that go in alignment with the completion of that application. So overall, we'll go through the why of the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. And I think that's really important so that as you are crafting your answers to the application, you are addressing what the committee wants to see. The application itself is fairly not complicated, especially for those that are doing the under 250,000. At the point where you go over 250, it becomes a little more complex, but still not super difficult if you understand how to answer the questions. One big thing is economic impact. So we will go through what that really means and how you can display that, not just for your Neighborhood Opportunity Fund application, but also for the application of the funders like the CDFIs that were mentioned earlier. All of these things will ask you for your economic impact. So if you're applying for any sort of grant outside of the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund or anything from the city, if you're applying for anything with CCLF or Chicago Trend, if you're applying for philanthropic dollars, everybody wants to know what is your economic impact. So to be able to clearly and concisely convey that is very important. Community plans and support. It's not just going to be letters that you have to show support, meaning you want to be able to refer to a plan if there has been one for your community. Because many times when projects don't get approval or you don't get the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, sometimes that is something that they cite, that you did not show that there was community support for what you want to do. So we want you to be able to understand where those documents do lie and how you can pull from them to support your application. Your tenant business plan, for many folks on the call, you may actually be your own tenant. So meaning if you are trying to buy a space and then occupy that space, you're not necessarily getting someone else's business plan, but this is the business plan for your business outside of the real estate project itself. And that's something that for some people, they don't think about separating. So you've got the real estate piece, but then you have the tenant piece. And if you are your own tenant, you also need to show the business plan for the operations of the business that will occupy the space. The creation of the dream team. We've had folks oftentimes ask who should be on our team. So we will go over what that dream team consists of, as well as how you should be engaging the folks and what you really need to be asking. Access to capital. So while the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund will cover a certain percentage, between 50 and 75% of your project costs, up to 250 or up to 2 million, you will need to be able to show the capital outside of what you're projecting to get from the NOF, as well as just capital to execute the project as a whole if you don't get NOF. So what is your strategy to determine where you're going to get your capital from, and what's your strategy to actually secure your capital? Project budget overview. We will go through the actual documents that the NOF will request that you fill out. This form is more complex for budgets over 250,000, but I think it's really important for you to understand whether your project is over or under the 250, what your project budget needs to include, and some of the questions and feedback that we will hear from various applicants that the city will typically ask. So we want to make sure to highlight those. You will also have an opportunity to hear from developers directly. So within some of these recordings, we have pulled previous developers who have received NOF to let you hear directly from them some of the challenges that they encountered. And again, some of these developers are also architects as well as general contractors. So the breadth of experience that they are tapping into is not just for the project that they themselves are bringing for their projects, but also projects that they have worked on for other Neighborhood Opportunity Fund recipients. And then finally, we are closing with in-person networking and hopefully a little bit of celebration to actually meet in person. So venue for that will be provided for those that register for the event. We will be supporting a locally owned business that is ideally close to downtown. So for those that are in the central business district, it should not be too hard to get here. But again, we are supporting a locally ran, non-chain, independently owned space. Hey, bro. So here's an example of the program materials that we utilize for the full Emerging Neighborhood Developer Accelerator program. For this 7-day, we will reference some of these, but we will also send you follow-up links to be able to evaluate these program materials in more detail. The primary one that we will utilize is the Entrepreneur's Field Guide, a practical guide to navigating the City of Chicago's Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. And if you actually take a look at that, we being Project Forward and E.G. Wood, we developed this guide in 2020. So unfortunately, there hasn't been too much that has changed in regards to entrepreneurs being able to collect on the NOF once it's awarded, because while the program itself has provided a lot more support than when they first started, there are still challenges and barriers that individual entrepreneurs have to just accessing capital, as well as navigating the development space when they've never done a development before. So the guide helps to identify what we know to be barriers to try to make it easier for you to participate in the process. The Small Business and Worker Economic Mobility Project is a database that you can toy around with. The Chicagoland COVID-19 Community Resource Guide or resource, the Chicagoland COVID-19 Community Development Resource Guide. is something that Project Forward has been working on with Chicago Community Loan Fund since COVID started. And it has recently just continued. While it talks about some of the COVID recovery dollars, it expanded more into social justice dollars. So it also includes funding that is targeting women-owned, BIPOC-owned businesses and those that support equity. So it is expanded. And we update this guide once a month. It's available on CCLF's website. But as a member of the K, we would just send this out to you as we update it. So CCLF gets their updates once a month. We internally update it almost every 2 weeks. So as a member, you would get access to quicker updates. On the right side, what you're looking at is market profile. So we provide information on where to provide or where to find some of these resources at low or no cost, because a lot of times data is not free. So we have to support entrepreneurs in understanding where to navigate these free data resources. And then finally, in the lower right corner, what you see is an example of a community plan. So this is what we call a quality of life plan. Every community does not have one. Some of them are out of date, but it is a basis for you to be able to provide proof, quote unquote, of community support, because there typically is a longer term engagement process that goes along with this. These are not the only example of community plans, but ones that are fairly known within the city, and in some cases what the city may use as a foundation to do other plans with. And so finally, that is an overview of what you can get in this 7-day Capital Camp. Again, I am Kristen Freeman, Chief Solutionist and founder of Project Forward. Our goal is really to help create an emerging developer class and cohort, so that as we are going through neighborhoods, we're not just relying upon what's happening with these really large scale developments, that neighborhood revitalization can be accelerated and amplified by a lot of the smaller projects. So we are really excited that you decided to participate in the cohort. You will receive, today won't be homework since it is the kickoff to camp, but moving forward, there will be additional tasks that you will get. And as we expand the program, we really do want this to feel like camp. So while today and most of these sessions are virtual and recorded, we would ideally love to be in person, incorporate some additional activities that are recreational and not necessarily so intense on just talking about securing the money, but having some fun kind of looped into that. So as we move in growing this program, we will move into physical spaces, but also a little more opportunity for recreation outside of just our closing day. So I will share some cool things. So, and if there's any additional feedback that you have or any questions that you may have about what you want to learn or what you want to cover, please do message me at the email that's listed. Also, this is my direct cell phone number. So you have the ability to contact me if you have any questions, concerns, or opportunities for follow-up. But I do want to say thank you for joining us for our first day of Capital Camp. And this particular one is focused on the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. So yeah, thanks.